we like to say nobody's buying a product. They're buying a solution to their pain. So that's really where we key in, which is how can we solve the pain? How can we show that we've been there, done that, and that people trust us to do this? We know if you implement these different use cases, these different jobs to be done, that Clary is the one who is going to help you achieve that revenue objective that we initially anchored to.
Hey everyone, welcome to On Messaging, a show for B2B product marketers on how to create messaging that resonates with your audience. On the show today, I have Emily Pick, Lead Product Marketing Manager at Clari. As I listened back to my conversation with Emily, I was blown away at the depth of knowledge she has in product marketing and messaging. This is an advanced level material if we're putting on a scale of learning, and I took a copious amount of notes during our chat. During our conversation, you'll learn how to influence the product roadmap as a product marketer, why most B2B messaging gets stuck in feature and function battles, how to create messaging for buying committees without losing clarity, how to transition from single product messaging to platform level narratives, and so much more. If you enjoy this podcast, don't forget to subscribe and follow it on your favorite podcast app, YouTube, and Substack. It's the best way to get notified of every new episode. All right, let's jump in the conversation. Emily, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, Josh, super excited to be here. Love what you're doing. I especially love all the people that you've had on lately. A lot of great voices and folks that I respect in the product marketing community. And I also just love messaging as a whole.
All right, let's do it. Speaking of, you came as a highly vetted recommendation to come on the show. And also, we were just chatting before this. A lot of fun, a lot of laughs that people are not going to hear on this recording, on our episode. But yeah, very excited to have you on. Thank you so much. But let's dive into things. And I wanted to kick it off first of you put up something recently. You said that, you're picking up your reading habit again, which is awesome. And can you tell us maybe some of the non-business books that you are reading right now, or maybe if you have a recommendation, something that you enjoyed recently?
Yes, I feel like I went too hard on business-oriented books for a while there, and I just wasn't escaping from the daily grind. So I was like, I gotta pick up reading real books again. One of the ones that I just recently read, Josh and I were talking before we actually officially started this, is I have the travel bug. I've had it since I was 19. My first ever backpacking trip was from London to Istanbul. Did it in a
Wow.
month with a friend on just about the most like shoestring budget possible. And the first book that I ever got was, I think my twin gifted it to me, and it was from Rick Steves.
Oh yeah.
And he's a travel writer,
Hmm.
typically does a lot of guidebooks, but he recently released a book called On the Hippie Trail. And it was all about his adventures when he was in his like end of college days. Maybe I might have been when he was in grad school, but he and a friend backpacked from Eastern Europe all the way to India and Nepal. And that's
Wow.
something that I wish I had gotten to, really live and experience as like in my younger days. Obviously, there's some geopolitical conflict right now that makes that a little bit more difficult. But his
Yeah.
essays just on what it was like to travel, they bring me back to kind of some of my grungier backpacking days from my mid to early 20s, back when I thought I would never sell out and become corporate. And it's just it hooked me. I couldn't put it down. I finished it in I think 2 days. So on the hippie trail, definitely recommend if you also have a little bit of a travel bug. Um, Rick Steves is a little bit corny. I think I'd like you kind of even like get that vibe, not just through his writing, but also through a lot of the like pictures that he shares throughout. But it's a pretty great adventure, and it just really took me out of even slightly possibly thinking about work, and really just thinking about all of my adventures and like how he kind of like I back in the day wrote a travel blog. I backpacked from India to Thailand I spent about four
Wow.
months bopping around, and a lot of it just brought back memories. And I was like, oh, I miss those days of being able to sleep in a $7 hostel. I would never do that now, but I sure used to love it back then.
That's so awesome. I think I may have seen some of his videos. He has like some really old school, like corny videos, but they're
Yes,
actually really insightful.
they're.
And
I want to say he does it all on like PBS or something. Like it's very
yeah,
public broadcasting.
there's something like that. And because I watched one before I went to Switzerland with one of my buddies, and it was like we picked up a lot of stuff and like heard of, he mentioned towns that and like small villages that I'd never heard of before. And he's like, "Yeah, you should check these out." And it was super cool. We followed some of the things that he did. But when you mentioned like his like kind of hippie day travel stuff, it made me think of a book by Bill Bryson. I don't know if you ever read Bill Bryson before. Um,
I don't know. You'd have to what was the book?
this one it reminded me of is called, I think it's called On a Foreign uh Continent, on a Foreign Continent. I think that's the name of it. I don't know. I'll have to look it up after this, but he went and traveled to like the northernmost point in Sweden, maybe, and like traveled the whole way south and like all through the European continent. And he just like tells these ridiculous stories of like eating at like a bed and breakfast and like all,
I
it's really,
mean,
really funny.
it's travelers are my favorite people because so much shit just happens to you, and
It's
you
so
really
true.
have to deal with it on the fly,
Oh yeah.
sometimes quite literally. And yeah, I think that's I always gravitate to other travelers and other like I said, kind of grungy backpackers. Like you can kind of identify the people who've had that in their past, and you're like, tell me your weirdest story,
Oh man.
because I have lots
Yeah.
of them, and I love to get them from other people too.
Yeah, we have a wild story. I'm not going to tell the whole thing, but we got stuck in Peru when COVID like really hit like the worldwide scene, and we got stuck there for 2 weeks, and it was quite an experience. But we'll
Yeah.
save that for another time.
Yeah,
I'm
that's.
sure everyone's like, "All right, get into the
I know. They're
messaging
like,
talk
please
now."
start talking about messaging.
All right, let's do it. Okay. So you work at Clari, and we're kind of brainstorming what we wanted to talk about today a little bit. And you gave an awesome suggestion of a topic in messaging that doesn't have a ton of content related to it, and that is more so platform-based messaging versus like a single product messaging. And it seems like Clari has really evolved from that like single product to more of a platform. But how do you think about about messaging at the platform level versus for a single product?
Yeah, I think so. This is a transition a lot of companies are going through, and especially a lot of companies that maybe they were really well known for something, maybe one particular niche, and now that they've added new products or features, they're trying to expand their messaging and make it so that it's not just about this thing that you used to be known for. So at
Mhm.
Clary, what maybe a lot of people don't know is that the very first genesis of our product was actually a mobile app for sellers to like log notes and those kinds of things. But where we really like
Okay.
made our bread and butter was around forecasting. So when people think of Clary, they think of forecasting. There's been a pretty big movement towards consolidation in the revenue technology space, towards something. Gartner is calling it the Revenue Action Orchestration Platform. Forrester is calling it the Revenue Orchestration Platform. The gist of it is it's taking like kind of those forecast deal inspection products, which is what Clary was initially known for, and it's combining capabilities also with conversation intelligence and sales engagement. So it's
Okay.
essentially they are coming together to create a super platform that, and also platform being used loosely. I know that there are some people who get very specific when you say platform. They're like, hey, technically you're incorrect whether or not this is a platform product suite,
Yeah.
if you will. We're seeing kind of this new wave of product suites that are coming together, and it's how am I helping everyone from rep to exec be able to execute on our revenue strategy and make sure we're more predictably able to hit our goals. So with that framing in mind, one of the big things that I think is really beneficial to Clari, especially as we've grown, is that when you think about what is the overarching goal of these revenue organizations, what are they trying to achieve? They're trying to achieve predictable revenue growth. They don't just want to grow at all costs anymore. They want to be able to say, this is where we're going to land. And I want to know that we're going to land there within a certain degree of confidence. And they also know that, hey, every interaction that we have, every workflow that we run, whether it's internal or external, all of those things need to be brought together in a single place so that I can have full control and visibility about how we are actually executing on our strategy to be able to win more revenue. And one of the things that we kind of talk about, like I said, there were almost like three previous categories that have converged: the revenue operations and intelligence, the conversation intelligence, and then also the sales engagement. Like we have some really strong competitors in the space. It's kind of a dogfight right now. And I think that one of the big things that separates Clari from the rest, at least from our perspective, is that what do you want to be known for, and can you lean into that thing? So because Clari's background is very much forecasting, serving the CRO, we have a very tops-down approach to how our product is typically adopted. We are making a lot of improvements and enhancements as far as getting more of that bottoms up. So having sellers and AEs, BDRs, SDRs, whomever it may be, having more workflows run through our platform. But ultimately, where do you want to be when people are looking at this new category of platforms? What do you want to be known for? At Clari, we want to be known for our revenue intelligence. We want to be known for providing revenue context. We want to be known for helping you be really predictable and being able to scale out your processes. And we think that our background as a forecasting solution really gives us a leg up there because we're able to serve really complex enterprises in a way that honestly our competitors can't at this point. You know, they could in a couple months, who knows, could be a year, it could be 2 years. But as far as where I think today, it's really leaning into what are your strengths, what do you want to be known for, and how does it bucket up to that higher level category? And that all comes from your positioning. And I think we're using our positioning as kind of that North Star to how are we messaging our platform.
So you had me thinking there, like, and I wanted to ask this as a follow-up. Well, like, what is your view of the positioning versus the branding as well? So if you want to be seen as this kind of all-encompassing platform, aside from just the individual products and solutions that you have underneath of it, how would you differentiate between those two, for especially for
Between,
Clary?
I was going to say between branding versus positioning.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's a great question. I mean, I guess when I think of, I did spend time previous in a previous life on like branding teams and as a part of a creative team, so I have some pretty strong opinions there. I think positioning is very much how do you want to be viewed by the market, and then more of the branding side is how do you reinforce that position through the visuals, through the creative, through the copy, like how it's almost like you've got your positioning up here at the top of the pyramid and everything's flowing out from there. So it's like the positioning is what's influencing the messaging, it's what's influencing the brand, and all of it comes together to tell a cohesive story as long as you're all pointed in the right direction, which is using your position as the net or as the North Star.
Yeah. So when you're looking at like platform messaging and then kind of like an individual product messaging, do you really spend a whole lot of time messaging to individual products, or you spend a lot of the time and focus on like, hey, we need this to come across as like all of our messaging is really focused on the platform as a whole, and we'll give a little bit of detail to each individual kind of use case of our different other products that kind of fit underneath that umbrella.
Yeah, I think so. First of all, that's a great and also a very timely question. One of the big movements that we're making in this year is shifting to a lot more solution focused messages as opposed to like products or modular based. Products, features, obviously, they're going to play a role, but what we are really trying to do now, again, as a revenue platform, talking to revenue teams, what we want to anchor on is what are your revenue objectives and what are you trying to solve for the year ahead, the next 2 years ahead, whatever it may be. Whether it's, maybe your big focus is, hey, we're trying to increase our GRR, we've got a big retention problem, or maybe it's a big one. Obviously, we were chatting about AI before we logged on as well.
Yeah.
I think that's a big question that comes up all the time, which is, hey, Clary, what are you doing with your AI to empower our sellers so you can be more efficient, more effective? And so it's kind of like, what's a sales efficiency play? What are they trying to do there? Are they trying to maybe keep their head count like flat over the years, but still continue to increase like the ability of their team to execute and to win more deals? So really, what we're thinking today is more of we've got our overarching position, our narrative, and bucketing up or laddering up into that are these different solutions which are supported by the platform. And then from there, I think one of the things here is that there's a lot of different directions that we can take. Of course, we want to lead with the platform. We want everybody to buy the full platform.
Yeah.
Who doesn't? However, we also recognize not everybody's going to buy the full platform and consolidate. Some people are going to have a piece of us, a piece of our competitor, maybe some homegrown tool, maybe spreadsheets. In a
Mhm.
perfect world, everything comes to Clary, but we know that that's not always going to be the case. And so that's where more of that, I guess I would say, product specific messaging comes in, is when we have identified uh, really what is that solution? How can we solve it? What do they have in place today? Where can we come in and help alleviate some of their pains? And which products are best positioned to do that? So
Mhm.
products fall pretty far down as far as what we think when we start talking about these things. I actually
Yeah.
just went through an exercise. We were kind of writing up our different solutions, and we were mapping what are the solutions, what are the pains, what are the personas, all of those types of things. Um, Products came in very last, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the key is nobody's out here. We like to say nobody's buying a product. They're buying a solution to their pain. So that's
Mhm.
really where we key in, which is how can we solve the pain? How can we show that we've been there, done that, and that people trust us to do this? We know if you implement these different use cases, these different jobs to be done, that Clary is the one who is going to help you achieve that revenue objective that we initially anchored to.
I love this. I love this. You're really breaking it down. It sounds like you all are really on it. And you're perfect. You're the perfect person to come on, and I'm really glad you suggested this topic. And you spoke a little bit about kind of like aligning the narrative. And I know we did talk a little bit about products and features, but products and features, we do launch them. That is part of our job as product marketers. But how do
Sure
you,
is.
big part of the job. But when you're launching, a new product or a new feature, how do you ensure it fits with the overarching narrative that Clary has versus it kind of being like off in the ether as its own thing? How do you tie it in together when it's new?
I mean, so much of that to me comes back to is your roadmap aligned to your corporate strategy? So for us, it was again in this exercise of not just mapping the features, we also mapped all of the roadmap items to where
Oh,
could they
nice.
potentially fit within these different solutions, within these different revenue objectives. How do they support? And I think once you have kind of your baseline, like of course there's like a baseline message for every product, right? There's like this is what it is, this is how it works, this is what you can expect from it. But then there's also kind of that higher order thinking, which is how does this specifically enable you to be able to do something again to complete one of those jobs to be done from within those solutions that we were talking about. So
Hmm.
for us, it's I won't say it's easy by any means, and I also won't say we have this fully figured out also by any means. But I think it's a very timely and relevant just because of the exercises we've been doing. And first of all, nothing that our product team is building is so far out of left field that it's not going to fit in with our overarching business strategy. So I think
Yeah.
that helps. I have been in situations where we've launched something and I'm like, where the fuck did this come from? Uh, but luckily, that has not been the case at Clari. So I've been pretty fortunate on that end.
I love this. All right, so follow-up question there. How do you get influence on the roadmap as a product marketer?
Man, that is also a great question. And I think so much depends on what stage your roadmap is in, right? Like a lot of times, if you're a new product marketer to a new company, like the roadmap's going to be already looking, say, a year out, something to that effect. Um, and you're probably not going to influence it that much from that year out perspective. But as far as what are we building next, where are we optimizing, I think bringing in a lot of the market and customer insights is where you can be most impactful.
Yeah.
For example, one of the things that we are doing right now, one of product marketers, one of the product managers that I work with pretty closely on the product line that I am aligned to. She is doing a bunch of customer research right now around AI specifically for sellers and how what types of jobs are they trying to solve with AI? What can we do to alleviate the pains and the pressures? And we're taking like multi-prong approach to this. Like she's like I'll join her with customer conversations every so often when I my schedule allows, but also just being able to bring in what is the analyst research saying? Is there anything that we can do? I love winter, for example, just for market research. I think it's such a great tool, and especially it was already brought on to us when I got here. So there
Nice.
was already preloaded with budget, which let me tell you, is great.
Oh,
Um,
shoot.
so being able to
You're
just go
lucky.
ahead and like run like market research studies when we can and understand like what is direct voice of field feedback because those are the things that people care about. I think as a product marketer, another like join customer conversations every so often, customer
Hmm.
stories, whatever it is. We have a customer marketer who runs our customer story program, but
Oh, nice.
myself and another PMM tend to split duties just as far as who can go attend those calls from the PMM side of the house and give PMM a voice and ask the questions that we're interested in, and then also bring those back to our team, bring them back to the product managers. Um, and really help to influence the way that they're thinking and about what direction we need to be going. And if we have certain products or features that do maybe need some direction, I guess, or maybe need to be redirected. That's also where it's great if you can get in as a participant in like the alpha or beta programs. I work really closely with my PMs to like help set them up for their alpha programs and their beta programs, making sure they have the right decks, making sure they have the right collateral and things that they can share out with whomever it is that is one of our early access program participants and just making sure that I'm involved in the feedback collection. And one of the nice things when you control the collateral, it also, I mean, truly, you're the one in control. So you get to
Yeah.
say, hey, these are the things. And also, did you guys hear this thing that they said about this? Wouldn't it be great if we were able to do that? And oh, hey, by the way, this feedback actually came back from, maybe six other customers during this alpha. Don't you think it's something that we should be considering?
Mm. Yeah.
Yes. So I think so much is just, are you tight with your PMs? Do you have a trusting relationship? And are you bringing them information that's actually valuable to them?
Hmm.
I don't want to just be like, hey, have you guys ever thought about doing X, Y, or Z? Like it needs to be rooted in the larger product strategy. Again, with that larger product vision, with the company vision. I think that's when you can have the most impact on the roadmap.
Yeah, for sure. When you know something is coming up on the roadmap, at what point do you get, say it's going to be released here in the near future? At what point are you starting to create that product marketing collateral as well as kind of that, like, I guess, base level messaging as well?
Yeah, so I actually like base level messaging. Every time we release a new roadmap and there's a new PRD, so a product release document that the product team fills out, I go through and I do the baseline messaging because I want to be prepared pretty much as soon as we are ready to roll on like doing the
Yeah.
actual collateral assets, whatever it may be. I think as far as when we start doing like any sort of marketing push is really dependent. So when we are creating our roadmap, we try to score each of those products based on what we call a customer impact score versus a product launch tier. So,
Okay.
launch tiers, those ones, I think at this point we're probably all pretty well versed in those, a tier one, two, three type of deal. One being like, hey,
Yeah.
here's the big like market game changer that we're going to go tell everyone and their sister about. And then we also though have a, like I said, this customer impact score, which is essentially low, medium, high. Um, Impact scores and launch tiers are not necessarily aligned, and this is really what we've created to try and handle some of that nuance, which is, for example, last year Clari released some new consumption forecasting, pretty new, pretty differentiated in the market, which is, hey, if I have like, say, a product-led growth model, if I'm a data warehouse like a Snowflake or a Databricks or something, and I am charging my customers based on consumption. That was really difficult to forecast before. And
Yeah, it
so,
is.
like, this was something that made a lot of noise in the market. People really cared about it. For our existing customers, they cared if they had a consumption use case. But for the most part, it wasn't something that was going to impact like their day to day. So for that, it had a customer impact score of low, but it was a tier one launch. So we started a lot of our marketing activities probably 2 to 3 months out from when we planned to do the initial launch, just because there is so much cross functional collaboration that needs to happen. And it's not
Oh
just
yeah.
us who's planning for a launch. Product marketers notoriously don't own channels. So we have to collaborate with our good friends over on the revenue marketing team, over on the content side, corp comms, communications, getting support and our community lined up like a lot there. But on the flip side of things, maybe I'm trying to think of something that recently came out that would have a high customer impact, but we probably didn't even do a legitimate launch for. We maybe mentioned it in our customer newsletter. I think we have a lot of those that are more focused on like the admin side or maybe like some settings, those types of things that. Oh, actually, a great example is like our forecast configuration. Before it wasn't particularly self-serve. It did require a lot of tickets and support and help from our internal team to get it set up.
Yeah.
But we have launched some new forecast configuration that's entirely self-serve. So huge impact to our existing customers.
Yeah.
Not something we're going to go tell the market about. Be like, wow, you guys can now do this. It's like, that's
Cool.
great, cool. Yeah, so like in that instance, we probably started more of the marketing for that when we entered the beta stage. So I would say
Okay.
if it's going to have a high customer or even a medium customer impact, we'll start kind of when we get into a beta to get our marketing kind of kicked into gear. If it's a tiered launch, we have timelines just as far as what's needed for, say, an alpha versus a beta versus the GA, and what's needed each stage.
Okay. Quite a breakdown. I love it. Um,
A
I
little too in depth, maybe.
Oh no, that's great. No, I think anyone listening to this, I mean, just I just learned a ton. I just took a bunch of notes. I mean, I'm most product marketers, like you said, are familiar with the launch tier, but the customer impact score is also a great approach. I think
Yeah, and you know
there's
what? I think that that's actually a big for me as a product marketer. So much of my time prior to joining Clary was spent in a lot of early stage startups, and the goal is almost entirely based on generating new revenue, new logos, right?
yeah,
Um, and we have such a retention like focus and making sure that we're keeping our current customers happy and retaining them. I think once you hit a certain size as a company, you almost reach an inflection point where you're like,
Mhm.
yeah, we should care about our customers and make sure that they are also getting the most information, that we're not just caring about those new logos. Like for us, it is very important that our customers are informed and that they're aligned with what we're doing. So those customer impact scores were a way for us to kind of codify, like, we are going to make sure that we are getting the right things in their hands so that they can feel like they're getting continuous value from our solution.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. I mean, the revenue you currently have is the easiest revenue to keep and to continue to get. So it costs a
Completely.
lot of money. Costs a lot of money to get a new customer.
I was gonna say I can't remember the stat, but it's like
It's
it
a lot.
costs X amount more to get a new customer than to retain an existing customer.
Hmm.
Not caring about your current customers and not thinking about them in the context of your product marketing. I know if you come from a larger company, you probably have folks who are fully dedicated to those systems and those functions already. But if you're like me and you've come from a smaller company, um, it's so important to make sure you've got that focus on customer and that you're not just thinking about one aspect of the business. I know it's really difficult, especially I've been a solo marketer, I've been a founding PMM, uh, it, and I've also been on the side where they're like, "Hey, can we start thinking about customers too?" And I'm like, "Yes, can we get more headcount?" You can't. Uh, but
You won't.
it's certainly something that I think we should all have in the back of our minds, which is how are we making life better for our customers? It can't just be new logos.
Hmm. Oh, for sure, for sure. Okay, so you talked a little bit about kind of like a top-down approach that you all have, kind of starting at that like chief revenue officer, CRO, maybe some RevOps leaders, the sales team, SDRs. How are you tailoring messaging that resonates with each of those stakeholders or each of those people that are kind of in the buying committee and keeping it all cohesive?
Man, you are again with the timeliness. I think so one of the things Clary is very good at and has been very good at has been speaking to that senior leadership, to the CRO, to like the VP plus of sales, to
Mhm.
those RevOps leaders. And we recently audited and we were like, hey, where are we falling short? And we're like, it is those frontline folks. So it's not just the frontline as far as like reps and SDRs, it's also the frontline managers. And so what we've been trying to do is, can we tailor the message to each persona dependent on the solution?
Mhm.
So it gets tricky. We're trying not to over index and not trying to get too cute and not trying to think too hard about it, because I think that's when you get a little lost in the sauce and you maybe uh, stop being able focusing on the high value message. But
Yeah.
I think we're strategic as far as we align with which campaigns our revenue team is running to make sure that we have, content and assets and collateral that are specific to that persona, that user group. I think we've done a nice job. We've identified who are the actual, and this is, I think, another problem that a lot of folks out there are probably feeling, which is when you have a buying group that isn't always the day-to-day users of your platform. Like,
Yes.
I think that can be tricky. Realistically, if you're looking for adoption of a revenue platform, you need those reps, those SDRs. There's a far bigger workforce there who needs to be serviced than just the CRO or the head of RevOps. Like, of course, those are valuable functions, and they are the ones who are making the financial decisions.
Hmm.
But you really can't get anywhere if you can't get adoption from the people on the front line. Like,
Yeah.
so it's a tricky balance, and I think again, you have to be pretty strategic about what you're sharing when and with whom, and making sure that you're not going too thin on any particular subset of users, because then you risk alienating them. We did, again, with this exercise that we've been doing in the last bit here, really mapping around the personas to the solutions to the use cases and the jobs to be done for each. And I think it's one thing to message around those. It's another thing to make sure the team is actually enabled and can have like qualified, quality conversations with all of those folks. Um, And
Yeah.
that takes some time.
Hmm.
I think it's hard to get your team to be able to speak to one or two personas, let alone seven, or however many there might be.
Hmm.
So it's a fine line of how far and how deep. I think for us, our big focus is going to be the buying committee, who's actually got the money in their pockets, who are going to do this, and then just
Yeah.
making sure that we also have the assets, resources available to the frontline users so that they can feel very comfortable using it, and they also want to be advocates for it.
Hmm. Are those assets for the frontline users something that they get after purchasing something like Clary, or are those provided to those, what are going to be the core users before purchasing, or how do you handle that?
Yeah, I think so. I two-pronged.
Hmm.
There's of course the pre-purchase side, which is what you get a lot of times out of like, say, our content team. The product marketers we serve as SMEs for our content team, so subject matter experts.
Hmm.
The first time I ever heard SME and nobody told me what it meant, I was like,
It's like,
I saw your face a little bit, and I was like, I got it.
no, no, I've heard it before. Uh,
I've seen that face before. But
I'm still
yeah,
getting used to it. I've
yeah.
always heard subject matter expert, and I've started hearing SME more lately, and I'm still adjusting.
No, let me tell you, the SaaS lingo is it's a tough one. I have
It's out of
a
this world.
twin, and she's actually sh her master's is in public administration, and I remember going to her master's ceremony, and like she has always spoken in, acronyms and words. Like I remember we were graduating from college, and she went to Western Oregon University, and I went to her graduation, and she said something about, oh, whoopsa, and I was like, what is a whoopsa? You can't just say whoopsa at us. Like, I was at the whoopsa event or something. And she's like, well, the Western Oregon University Psychology Students Association, of course. I was like, fuck.
Oh my gosh.
But then, like, we went to her MPA graduation, and like my older sister and I were like, wow, all of them talking acronyms. We're like, she's found her people. Like, and now I also do it. And I'm like, oh, now I'm
Yeah,
over
when
here
you're
saying me.
SME.
So anyways, I trying to bring it back. So we service SMEs for our content team, and we're really focused on what are some of like the playbooks, best practices types of materials that we can get in the hands of our users. So they can either use them pre or post sales. Obviously, pre sales, it's to help generate interest in what can we do for you. Post sales, it's hey, what are some ways that I can deploy the platform to get better value, or so that I can,
Yeah.
if I'm a rep and I'm just trying to increase my speed to lead, what are some things I can do there? My cycles are getting too fast. What are your recommendations on how I can get this sped up so that I'm not, stuck in an endless cycle of, hey, my champion left, I need to go find a new one. Like, what are things that Clary can do to help me alleviate some of those pains? But and then on the once they become a customer, very fortunate to have a customer ed team who owns our community and who puts together a lot of our courses that we have around, again, things I did not have as a solo founder PMM. I
Yeah.
would have loved.
Yeah.
Would have loved these things. So I feel very fortunate now to have them. But they're the ones who kind of own a lot of that documentation, just as far as getting people up to speed and making sure they can like use the platform and use the different products and use it correctly and get value from it.
Hmm.
And we work pretty closely with them, particularly when we're getting to release something, especially if it's like consumption forecasting was a great example. Like we had to create all new courses because this was net new completely. So there was nothing for them to pull from or to learn from. So we had to do it and learn together. And the PMM who ran that worked very closely with the customer ed team just to make sure that we had something available, and so that we could teach the customers and our own field how to use these things. So
Yeah.
um, really went off the rails there talking about SMEs, but I hope that brought that back.
No, it did. It did. Um, there's So there's a couple things I wanted to follow up on that we've kind of talked a little bit throughout this episode. And one of them is you've mentioned how this space is a very competitive space. There's a lot of competition. You know, Clary's kind of ahead of the game right now, but you never know if you're just going based off of features. Like at some point, everyone's going to catch up.
And I do think I should caveat that is
Yeah,
that I
go ahead.
think Clary is ahead of the game when it comes to being known for revenue predictability. I will say our
Yeah.
competitors are ahead of us in other capacities, and so much as, hey, which one of these different functionalities or which one of these value props essentially are you most concerned about as a business? Because at the end of the day, I think when you are selling into a competitive situation, the big thing is how do I get them to think about this from my perspective? And once they're bought in, how do I make sure that I can keep this lead and that I can continue to influence and reinforce our position as the lead for this very specific thing that they're looking for, this niche category topic, whatever it may be. And I I actually believe feature wise, there's probably a fair bit of parity
Yeah.
between the competitors in the space. And what it comes down to is what do I value or what do the customers value in a revenue platform, and which of these essentially four players in the space, um, which of the four should I be, looking at more deeply based on what it is that I'm trying to achieve.
That was literally my next question. Like, how do you do that? You're in a very competitive space. We're talking about how you messaging and positioning against competitors, especially when we're looking at it from a perspective of a platform versus, hey, I'm just trying to sell this individual solution that I have to that might solve the problem for this customer, but I want them to be a customer of the whole platform. And they're looking at some other competitors that are doing pretty much the same thing feature wise. So how do you solve that? How do you
Yeah, I
overcome
mean,
that
I
challenge?
think if you are getting into a feature function battle, you've probably you really missed your opportunity to create preference early on. And that's like I feel like there's only a degree of how much I can speak to this specifically to Clary and our current competitors just because of how tight the market is right now, and you never know who's listening. But yeah, I'm just gonna say kind of reinforce what I said right before this, which is leaning into what do you want to be known for? How do I create preference for that? How do I get so that, I mean, I think the biggest giveaway that another competitor is in one of your deals, that they're influencing your thinking is really what language is my buyer using? Are they essentially repeating things that we know to be like the value props of this competitor and how they kind of seed some landmines in our deals? Like, who do they buy into? Who do they believe? What do they care about? And I think that establishing that connection up front and really reinforcing again with Clary, if we're going into a conversation, we're going to lean into what is our strength, and we're going to position around why this strength is the strength you should care about the most, and ideally that lines up with what they do care about the most.
Yeah.
I can tell you that we'll see opportunities come in the door and they'll more or less be mimicking word for word, some of our competitors headlines on their websites, things that we've seen and heard from them, and we know that we're on our back foot. We know
Yeah.
this immediately. And so it's, can we bring them around to our way of thinking without getting into, like, if we're in a feature function battle, it's probably 50-50. If we can get them coming in speaking our language, using our terminology, some of our branded category language, we're a lot more likely to win. I couldn't tell you like stats specifically on that, but I
Yeah.
can tell you that getting them into your way of thinking is probably the most effective way to win over competitors. There is nothing I hate more than having to make a spreadsheet with tick marks of what we have versus what they have.
Yeah.
Yeah, and where you're like, oh no, but let me tell you, they don't have this one very specific tiny thing. Maybe there is an instance where it is going to be a game changer, but for the most part, pretty rare.
Typically not. Yeah. And also, like you said, when you're getting into that feature function battle, it's on that 50-50 line. A lot of what's gonna win the deal is who's cheaper as
Oh,
well. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think so. I was just interviewing a customer for a case study the other day, and what I shared it with our team because it's so reinforcing of the things that we've been talking about as a company and the shifts that we're making in our selling motions. And that's, we have a large public enterprise customer who we went up against a direct competitor in the space, and they said, the CR or this, I can't remember, CEO or CRO had a direct preference for the competitor because they had a previous relationship there. And the reason they changed their mind was because we sold against their pain and we sold to the value and we didn't try to sell them on features and functions.
Wow,
And
that's
I think
awesome.
that's the best testament to we're doing things the right way and that we're moving in the right direction. If you're throwing features and functions and you think you're going to win, you're probably not. I
No.
mean, unless it's like some baller ass function that you like have never seen before, right? Like other than that, but all things equal, it's who's solving my pain. Who am I going to feel the most comfortable moving forward with? I think we have seen some instances where people are willing to give a bit on price if they feel that they really are going to have their problem solved by Clari versus a competitor, no matter how much they drop their price, right? Like
Yeah.
I think there are some advantages there, but yeah, for the most part, if you're in a feature function battle, pricing battle, it's going to be tough.
Yep. Does the messaging resonate? And in that case, that was an awesome example because it did. Um, how how did you enable the sales and maybe customer success team, people that are involved in those conversations? How do you enable them to use the right words to really talk about the value and hit on the pain points? Maybe what does some of the documentation look like, or what is your process to enabling those those team members?
Yeah, I think so. Number one, I certainly can't take credit for this. I've been at Clary for about a year, and their motion for this has been going on for about 2 years now. So, as far as the initial team who first set this up, I mean, I've seen a lot of their documentation. It is a lot of enablement and training and going through and different types of sessions to be able to bring this to life. Different types of collateral documents. One thing I always remind the team about when we are working together is that different people have different ways of absorbing information. I personally am someone who learns by reading first. I know there are a lot of people who learn by listening. I know there are a lot of people who learn by watching videos. So making sure that you have those different types of information available in those different formats so that people can consume them in a way that is most aligned to their learning style makes a really big difference.
Yeah.
And then just as far as like what we've been doing, bringing in customer proof has been a huge example for us to get the team to continue leaning this way and to not just default to the feature function selling. It's reinforcing because we're seeing these big customers, these big platform deals. We're seeing, obviously, when you can tie that to the money that's going into their pocket as well, that's super helpful. Obviously,
Very
if you
true.
sell a platform deal versus if you sell a forecasting only deal, you're going to make more money off the platform deal. And if the best way to make that money is by solution selling, then they're going to lean in there. So I think a lot of it was the initial setup that the team originally did. And then a lot of what we've been bringing in now is bringing in that social proof, bringing in proof from customers, and continuing to reinforce.
Yeah. I was speaking with Alex Eaton, and he did a webinar for UserEvidence recently where they talked about I mean, the best marketers are your customers. They're going to write the best messaging for you. They're like, you literally use their words. If you go, I think he said this, if you go look at the UserEvidence website, a lot of their solutions or product pages, they don't start with a product image. They start with words that are directly from a customer because it resonates. And
Yes.
it puts whoever that buyer is who's visiting your website in the shoes of who they're seeing on the product page right there. They're reading their words and thinking, that could be me, versus, oh, maybe I could see myself using this, you know, this product
Yes.
this digital thing that's on a screen right here
Yes.
versus resonating with a person and a story.
I agree. I think your customers have the most like I actually we just had a webinar the other day for the product line that I run just for customers, and it was entirely based around that SDR use case. And the first thing I did after that webinar was over, super engaged. The Q&A was popping up. The first thing I did was pull out the entire Q&A. I wanted to know, what questions are they asking? How are they talking about things? What do they care about? If
Yeah.
they're willing to attend a webinar and submit a Q&A, that must mean they care about it. So,
Oh yeah.
really, how can I pull insights from this? What are some of the common threads that I know that I can bring to the forefront of these messaging exercises of our copywriting, just to make sure that we are representing that voice. And like, I think the team over at UserEvidence, I don't have the opportunity to use them. I'm not a customer, but I love their website. I love what they're
Yeah.
doing. I think it's a lot of fun, and I think that it really is the future, just as far as what are we doing to bring customer evidence into our PMM workflows more than anything.
Hmm.
I think it's a lot of fun. We personally use a tool called Lottable, which is pretty similar, and
I think I've heard of
it's
that.
been a game changer. Quite
Yeah.
honestly, being able to get that customer insight directly from calls, being able to get it quickly approved, um, watching like our customer testimonial slides go from like 30 to 80 in the matter of like a month, 2 months, whatever it was, like huge.
Nice. Yeah,
So,
that's awesome.
two great tools. I'm sure
Hmm.
there are others out there too, but I know those are two companies I really like and who've
Yeah,
really
yeah.
helped me in my job. So, would recommend.
Very cool. We also gave a really good piece of advice there on how to pull customer words. You have a customer webinar. If they're engaged, they're active in the Q&A. I know some people don't allow Q&A in their webinars.
No, we
I
want
don't
it.
think this is a bad
Bring
idea.
it to us.
Yeah,
I want your words. I want to know what you're thinking. I want like I think it is
hmm
a gold mine opportunity for market insights.
it is for sure. But and then yeah, pulling that and using that as a list of just to run over. You're gonna get the typical, is this recorded? Am I gonna get the recording afterwards? You're gonna get those, but you're also gonna get people asking actual
The number
real,
one question.
the number one webinar question in the world. It's like, of course it's
It's
recorded. What?
every time I put together like the talk track or something for a webinar, I'm like, all right, one of the first things you say, don't worry, this is being recorded.
Seriously, it's a given. But yeah, I mean, you're also going to get so much from that too, from people that are engaged, they're asking good questions. It's good to just have a nice look over, like, oh, I could use that. That's
Yeah.
good. Yeah, perfect. All right, let's jump into some of the latter questions that we have here. I ask these three questions to everyone that comes on the show. And what is one piece of messaging advice you would give to listeners that they could take away and implement tomorrow?
I think we just talked about it. I think I think listen to your customers, find their words,
Hmm.
start using them.
Yeah.
Just start integrating them into your story. The minute you start seeing the jargon, the minute you say actionable insights or leverage or something, think to yourself, is this how my customer would speak?
Hmm.
Because they're going to
Yeah.
suss that out immediately as soon as they start seeing marketing speak. Maybe unless they're marketers, they're immediately going to tune it out. So I think put it in the language of your buyers is my number one piece of advice. There are lots of ways you could source it, from webinars, from tools like UserEvidence or Lottable, from your testimonials on G2 or Gartner Peer Insights, something to that effect. But
Hmm.
find the way they're talking about you and start using it.
Yeah. I love it. Great piece of advice. A more personal question. If you could put it into a single sentence, what is living all about?
Find what you love and do it. Like,
Heck yeah.
it doesn't, this isn't a single sentence, but
No,
I
go for it.
think I have this conversation. A good friend of mine, we actually met working together. We were in marketing, we were copywriters together on a creative team, and then we were in marketing together. Her husband used to be a mining engineer. Um, we've, the three of us have had many in-depth conversations about this, which is
Yeah.
like, how do you live your life? Like, I think there's a lot of different ways that you can look at it. For me, work is a means to an end, and that end is being able to go out and either travel, as we talked about before, or get outside, spend time in the mountains, hang out with my dog, go lift weights, whatever it is, the things that I love. And this job gives me the means to be able to do that. There's the flip side of things. Those friends, they quit it all and they started a farm,
Oh, no way.
and they love it, and they are certainly not in the same financial shape they were in before, but for them, it was more important that they find fulfillment in their work and that they are contributing meaningfully. And so, two very different perspectives. Uh, I love product marketing, but I wouldn't say it's the thing that truly sparks joy in my life. That's
Yeah.
I find that elsewhere. I
Yeah.
really enjoy product marketing. I like it. I'm good at it. But I don't necessarily view it as my sole source of fulfillment in the same way other people maybe tie to their roles. And when they do that, I think it's so important to be in a role that does like really fulfill you in that way. Like my friends who went to the farm, they made sacrifices in order to do something that really sparked joy for them. And so for me, different ways of doing it, but
For sure.
mine is definitely flying out to Nicaragua in the morning.
Yeah.
That's where I find the joy. So find what it is that you love and go do it.
I love it. I love it. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for answering that question. I know I ask everyone and everyone's had a different answer. And
Oh,
that's what I love about it. It's very unique to the individual. So thank you for sharing.
yes, of
Um,
course.
if listeners found what you shared today helpful, what is one thing they can do to lift you up, or where can they find you?
They can find me on LinkedIn. I actually don't know what my handle is. I think it's
Is that even a
maybe
thing?
just Emily Pick. Well, you never know. There's a lot of people out there with similar names.
That's true.
I know my name. But yeah, just connect on LinkedIn, follow. I do my best to try and respond to folks in there. Sometimes I get a little bit too busy and I'll miss messages in my inbox, but
Yeah.
just generally, I love hearing from other product marketers. I love to know what you're doing. I'd love to be connected and just learn more about like how you're thinking about the very many challenges of our role and how we can solve them. So I would say
Yeah.
that's probably the best way.
Perfect. Well, Emily, thank you so much for coming on. This was a ton of fun. I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Josh. I love what you're doing with this podcast. I love that you're getting marketers more front and center to talk about things like messaging. So appreciate it all.
Of course. All right. Bye bye, everyone.